So our first question is...
in the workstream 2 of the e-engagement against violence project.
What about workstream 3, e-engagement for participation?
Workstream 4 was dedicated to the teacher training.
So our first question is, what do we mean by populism on the European stage? And we've had a considerable debate on this. And what we've done is we've tried to regard populism as a narrative framework, a framework of ideas that can be bolted onto various political contexts. What we've not done is to regard it as a political movement or indeed an ideology. Rather, we've looked for a set of ideas which can identify populist type movements. And those ideas are, first, us. So how do we define a group of us, a set of people who belong? The second thing we've looked for is a sense of other. How do we define other people, be it immigrants, those with certain skin colours or others? We then asked, what are the other indicators of populism? And we've come to the idea that this is essentially represented by anti-elitism and opposition to organisations such as the EU. So these are the indicators of populism that we've used. Our second question has been to look at the ways in which these groups, and we've selected a number of them across different countries, the way in which populist groups have sought to convey their message and recruit young people. And the essence of our finding is simple, that many of these groups see youth as a central dynamic of their active membership. And they go to great lengths to both recruit youth activists, to train them and to make them have an impact. On the other hand, there are some groups within our cohort of organisations who explicitly do not target youth membership, and indeed some of them argue that the youth should come to them. Their message should be so powerful that they don't actively have to seek. So that's our second question. Our third question is to say, how do these groups communicate their message? We have focused in this project particularly on the role of media and new media in conveying a populist message. Now, the issue is very interesting because what we find is that many of these populist groups, particularly the very new ones, have gone out of their way to exploit new media contexts, that is Facebook, Twitter, their own internet sites, the presence of their material on third-party sites. And they use that both to convey their message and to recruit people. So this is a very important medium, and that leads to a final question which I'll come to in just a second. But the interesting thing is that for many of these organisations, there is a sense in which the old media, the legacy media, is also important. Newspapers, pamphlets, pamphleteering. And for some groups at least, for instance the British National Party, where old-fashioned attempts to engage people, that is direct, face-to-face, through door knocking, through meetings, through stalls, through conferences, through those sorts of contacts, are still incredibly important. But the key finding is that new media is crucial to both the spreading of a populist message and its consumption by an audience, particularly a young audience. So the question for us is, what do we then do? That is the aim of the rest of the project, but the workstream 1 was interested in two things. One, how do we, in schools and other educational facilities, how do we tell young people about populism, about the drawbacks and problems with the narrative framework of populism? And the answer is we see attempts to engage populism through the courses on the media and through courses on citizenship. And this is consistent across all of the countries. But what is interesting about this is that these are fragile courses. So many of the new media type courses are not there in their own right. So media is added on to, say, language courses as a subject of study in schools. And citizenship classes can be hijacked, can be reinvented for nationalist and patriotic ends. So our attempts as things stand to combat a populist message is fragile, is reversible, is capable of being appropriated to different messages. So that is the finishing point of workstream 1, which then leads into the other work streams in the AAV project.
In the workstream 2 of the e-engagement against violence project, we were particularly interested in discourses of populist parties and movements as they appear on the web. That is on web pages and social media of populist political actors. In this respect, we selected 14 parties from 7 different countries and analyzed 173 texts which were coded by the researchers. We applied the method of critical frame analysis and found out that populist discourse in Europe is today very much characterized by identification of various types of threats. First, as the biggest threat are presented migrants and also some other marginalized groups belong to this corpus of threats. These are Muslims, so religious minorities, then Roma, and also sexual minorities, that is gays and lesbians. There are also some other issues which are perceived as threats by populists that are, for instance, liberal left ideology, communism, also multiculturalism. And an important feature of populist discourse is also anti-elitism. That means we captured this with the frame politicians and government not working for the people. It is interesting here that these elites are always brought in connection with these other groups. That means with immigrants, with Roma, with homosexuals, meaning that other groups are presented as collaborators of the elites. Populist parties argue that they collaborate with the elites because they kind of profit from the policies of current political mainstream parties. On the other hand, if we look at what kind of, let's say, solutions or propositions are made by populist parties, we see that first of all they propose anti-migration policies. This can vary from, let's say, integration of immigrants, assimilation of immigrants, ban of immigrants from the ban on immigration, or also expulsion of immigrants from the country. It is important also to say that other groups are constructed as a threat, most of all because of their lifestyle, of their values, thereby their ethnicity or national affiliation or gender or sexual orientation are not exposed as problematic. So in this sense, populist parties can avoid being accused of procuring hate speech. Meaning that populist discourses today are very close to what is perceived by many scholars as neo-racism. And in this respect, let's say it's not a simple discourse which let's say at one hand we can say, yes, it is simple in the way that it constructs very clearly problems, and if we solve these problems, let's say exclude some groups from the society, this will then solve all the problems of all the society. But it's also a very complicated discourse which is adapted to current legal norms, and thereby also always try to find some ways to avoid being accused of procuring.
Can you make just few examples of this rhetoric?
Let's look at the example of homosexuals because I think it's quite interesting. There we see that they are constructed as a threat to the nation, to the family, to children. They are constructed as essentially different, also as collaborators of the elites. And on the other hand, when we look at what do populist parties propose against this threat, this proposition is quite vague. It's called value reorientation, back to traditional values and so on. So it's very hard to say, okay, we can recognize here that it's about homophobia, it's about hate speech and so on, but in legal terms, it's not hate speech. Because populist parties are very much aware where are the borders of hate speech currently in particular countries.
Okay, the very last question, which is what Gianna read from the conclusion of the report, which is this populist discourse something about these groups, or is a wider narrative framed which is employed by others?
Yes, here I must say that we didn't study the whole political spectrum, so that we could for sure say that populism intervenes in the mainstream politics. But many of the movements and parties which we analyzed belong to mainstream political context in certain countries. They have been part of governments, they have members in the parliament and so on. But we for sure observe that mainstream parties also, let's say, adopted their discourse to the populist right-wing discourse, and that it is embedded in the political discourse as a whole today in Europe, and also in policies. I said there is populists present immigration and immigrants as the biggest threat currently in Europe, and if we look at the official policies of the European Union, they're very militaristic. We see what's happening on the borders. It looks like European Union itself perceives immigrants as threat and also responds this way to this issue.
Well, what about the Work Stream 3, engagement for participation? Well, first, what was the main objective of the Work Stream? The aim was developing learning materials to increase young people awareness towards the media and discrimination, and empowering them through the improvement of their participatory skills. To achieve this objective, we designed and developed 50 learning units that were implemented through an e-book that teachers and students could use into the classroom. And to test these learning contents, to evaluate their effectiveness, we tested the materials with almost 500 students in the school, and we involved about 30 teachers over the period March-October 2014. What were the main results? Of course, the production of a huge, I would say, quantity of learning material on several topics ranging from information, decoding and production, audiovisual analysis and ideologies, video game and education, political communication and propaganda, and online activism and networking. So several topics were covered through our development activity. And in terms of learning results, we can say that students improved their capacity of talking about discrimination in the media, of describing discrimination that the media vehiculate, and also they learned we can say up to a certain point, they developed the capability of decoding the strategies, the communicative strategies that media adopt to describe, to talk about the other. And also students improve their capacity of self-express themselves and to develop campaigns against discrimination. Some of the products that students created are available on the web as an evidence of their media skill capacity and capacity that they developed during the project. Thank you.
So today we present at the final conference the results of the Workstream 4. The Workstream 4 was dedicated to the teacher training and teacher training of media literacy skills to fight discrimination and populist discourse in the media. And so the method we chose in this project was to build a new learning platform for offering to the teachers the possibility of self-training to develop those media literacy skills. So 5 modules were developed in connection with the activity developed with the students. So either the teachers choose the entrance of activity with the students, either they choose the entrance of self-training for themselves. So we had the opportunity today to present to the public all the work and the resources that have been designed on this platform, and also to present the experimentation that we had led during this project. So it's about 150 teachers that test the platform and who gave to us also the feedback about this project, about the resources. What we can learn from this experimentation is that it's a really sensitive topic, media literacy against discrimination, but it's needed. So often the teachers don't know how to deal with this topic in the context of the classroom, and also in fact how they can illustrate this topic, what kind of resource they can use for helping them to moderate or to lead an activity about this topic in the classroom. So that was very interesting to get the feedback. So it's a sensitive topic but needed, but also we can learn from this experimentation that in fact the e-learning process is something still difficult for teachers. That's not something very natural to come to be in front of this computer and to do exercise for 2 hours, and also to appropriate the situation, this material to situation of in a classroom. So the feedback we had is that it's time-consuming for sure, but also it's difficult to work on the e-learning platform. But they really strengthen the fact that it's a lot of resources, and they can pick unit, they can pick images, they can pick media for using them in the professional situation. So now, what next with this platform? All those resources stay online, and we would like to build a community of teachers using them, and also sharing resources, sharing professional situation about those situations of discrimination or populist movements in the context, in the national context. And so it's, as an expert say today, it's just the beginning. Even if we are at the end of the project, it's just the beginning of networking of teachers, networking of resources. And so we are very glad today that this project had its first echo, and we hope that there would more and more echoes in the community, the school communities around Europe. That's it.